Okay, so get this. Picture like a tidal wave. But instead of water, it's Indian startups all about to hit the stock market. IPOs everywhere. That's what everyone's predicting for 2025. And we're going to dive deep into all these financial articles, see what they're saying about this IPO frenzy. We've got Business Standard, Outlook Startup Desk, Money Control, Inc. 42, even NDTV Profit News. So yeah, we're covering all the bases here.
It's more than just how many IPOs though, right? We got to go deeper.
For sure. We want you to really get what this means, especially if you're thinking about, investing. So let's start with 2024. I saw a bunch of these articles calling it a roller coaster year for IPOs. 13 startups went public, raising a combined, wait for it, or as 29,000 crore.
That's wild. But it's Outlook Startup Desk said you've got Swiggy, right? They're soaring 26% after listing. And then OlaElectric, 51% drop from their high.
Yeah, talk about a wild ride. So for someone who's not a Wall Street guru, what's the lesson from all that 2024 action?
It shows you how risky IPOs can be. They can pay off big time, but also super volatile. That's what you got to understand. The company, yeah, but also the whole market situation. Something else that changed in 2024, and this is important, startups got a lot more realistic about how much they're worth.
Okay, so less hype, more substance.
Exactly. Remember that downturn a while back? Probably made companies realize they got to show investors they're not just about growing super fast, but about making money, being sustainable for the long haul.
So 2025, over 20 startups lined up to go public. What should we be looking for? It's all about profit now.
Profit's huge, yeah, but also standing out from the crowd. Money Control had this great article, talked about how crowded the Indian startup world is. If a company wants to really kill it in an IPO, they got to have that special something.
Like what? Give me an example.
Think cutting-edge tech that nobody else has, a business model that shakes things up, or even just a really strong brand that people connect with, something that makes investors say, this is the one to watch.
I get it, but stepping back for a sec, why all this IPO excitement in the first place? Why India? Why now?
Well, Business Standard made a good point about India's position in the equities market. Even with all the global craziness, people are optimistic about India's long-term economy. That attracts investors from here and abroad. They're looking for opportunities.
So it's not just about the companies themselves, it's the whole India's on the rises story.
Exactly. Plus, those more realistic valuations we talked about makes IPOs more appealing to investors. They see a better chance of making a good return compared to, the crazy valuations of the past. Basically, less risk, potentially the same reward.
So, strong market, companies with their feet on the ground, sounds like a recipe for success. But are there any, hidden dangers we should be watching out for?
Of course, one big one is if those valuations are still too high, companies might underperform. If they can't meet expectations, investors get disappointed, and that could cool down the whole market.
So almost like a bubble that could burst. What are the signs? How do we know if that's happening?
Watch how recent IPOs are doing. If companies aren't hitting their targets, that could be a red flag. Also, be careful of too much hype, valuations that don't make sense. Remember, a company's value should be based on solid financials and a clear plan to make money, not just hype and promises.
Solid advice. But let's zoom out for a minute. Beyond the money and the hype, what does this IPO wave mean for the whole Indian startup scene?
That's the question, right? It's complicated, potential upsides and downsides. On the one hand, the money coming in from IPOs could be huge for everyone. More funding means more opportunities to grow, innovate, create jobs.
But is there a flip side? Could all this IPO action actually hurt startups in the long run?
Inc. 42 pointed out something interesting. More and more founders, 73% now, up from 64% in 2023, see an IPO as their main exit strategy. That shift in focus from building a lasting company to just cashing out could stifle innovation.
I see what you mean. If the goal is just to go public and sell,
Exactly.
that's different from the passion that usually drives startups.
Exactly. And that pressure to keep shareholders happy could make companies avoid taking risks, which is kind of the opposite of what made them successful in the first place.
So it's a trade-off. Huge potential for growth and capital. But maybe you lose that scrappy, innovative spirit. What's the most important thing for someone trying to make sense of all this?
Look at IPOs from both sides. They can be a great opportunity, but do your research. Understand the companies, their business models. Be realistic about valuations. Don't let the hype cloud your judgment.
Great advice. Don't just jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
Okay, we've covered 2024's craziness, the potential of 2025, and what's driving this whole IPO craze. But there's another side to this story, right? It's not just about the money.
You're right. The human side often gets forgotten. Business Standard brought up a good point about the lack of women in leadership roles. Still a major problem.
The numbers were pretty shocking. 83% of companies have less than 20% women in leadership.
And it gets worse, 51% have less than 10%. Even with all this talk about innovation and progress, we can't ignore this inequality.
It makes you wonder, as these companies go global, will they address this? Or will it become even more of a problem?
It's something to think about. And speaking of thinking about things, yeah, it's like we can't just celebrate all the success without looking at, the ethical side of things.
Totally. And it's not just gender diversity either. That Business Standard article also talked about how AI is changing these business models,
Yeah.
especially in things like fintech and enterprise solutions.
Oh, yeah. AI is a game changer for sure. Automating tasks, giving companies insights from data, even changing how they interact with customers. Startups that use AI well, they'll probably have a big advantage in the IPO market.
But couldn't AI also lead to job losses? And what about the ethics of it all? Feels like there's some big conversations we need to be having.
You're right, we can't ignore those concerns. And while we're talking about important stuff, let's talk about valuations. Inks 42 had this article warning about unrealistic valuations and how they can cause problems later on, like poor subscription, and even the company underperforming after going public.
So like setting the bar too high could backfire? Investors are smarter these days. They're looking for real growth, not just hype.
Exactly. The IPO is just the beginning. The real challenge is building a company that keeps delivering value to shareholders over the long term.
Which brings us back to that question. Will going public help these startups stay innovative? Or will it hurt them? It's a kind of a paradox, right? They need money to grow, but will they lose that scrappy energy that got them this far?
It's the million-dollar question. Some people say pleasing shareholders can kill creativity, make companies afraid to take risks.
But couldn't you also argue that more money and more talent could actually boost innovation, like it lets them tackle bigger, more ambitious projects?
It's an interesting tension, honestly. I think the answer depends on the company, their leadership, and how much they stick to their original vision.
So for you, the listener, what does this all actually mean? Let's break it down.
First, the Indian IPO market is hot, but it's also unpredictable. Potential for big wins, but definitely some risks too.
Don't just jump on the bandwagon. Do your research. Understand the companies, their business models, look at their financials, and think about their long-term prospects.
Second, remember those trends we talked about? Profitability, having something unique, and using AI effectively. Those are all good signs.
And don't forget the human side of things. Think about the social and ethical impacts of these companies as they grow.
Are they promoting diversity and inclusion? Are they using AI responsibly? These aren't just ethical questions. They can actually affect a company's long-term success.
We've covered a lot today, but I want to leave you with one last thought. As more Indian startups go public, will they be able to hold on to what makes them special? Will they stay connected to their roots?
Or will the pressure to be part of the global market make all startups look the same?
That tension between staying true to themselves while going global is fascinating. Going through these articles, I was really struck by how ambitious these Indian startups are.
It's infectious, isn't it? They don't just want to be big in India. They want to be global players, disrupt the world.
And that confidence, that drive, it's definitely getting investors' attention.
Mm.
But it also puts a lot of pressure on these companies to deliver.
No doubt, the stakes are high. And that's why it's crucial for investors to look beyond the hype. Do these companies actually have what it takes? The leadership, the strategy, the ability to achieve their goals.
It's about doing your due diligence, right? Not just looking at the numbers, but really understanding the team, the culture, their vision.
Exactly, because when you invest in an IPO, you're investing in a story about the future. And the best stories are grounded in reality, but also have that spark of possibility, that hint of something groundbreaking.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listener to take away from all this?
For me, it's this. The Indian startup IPO frenzy is more than just a financial trend. It's about a nation coming into its own, full of innovation, ambition, and a desire to make a difference in the world.
Like a collective coming-of-age story.
And like any coming-of-age story, there will be challenges, setbacks, moments of self-discovery. But there's also that excitement, that sense of limitless potential that makes it so captivating.
So buckle up, listener. The Indian startup IPO roller coaster is just getting started. It's going to be a wild ride.
But remember, just like any roller coaster, enjoy the thrills, but hold on tight.
And maybe pack some motion sickness meds, just in case. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the exciting world of Indian startup IPOs.
Oh.
Catch you next time.
Yeah, and that confidence, that drive to grow, investors are definitely picking up on that.
Oh, yeah, for
But
sure.
it also puts a ton of pressure on these companies. They got to deliver.
Absolutely. The stakes are high, no doubt about it. That's why it's so important for investors to look beyond the hype. Do these companies actually have what it takes to succeed?
It's about doing your due diligence right, not just looking at the numbers, but like really understanding the team, the company culture, their vision. Exactly. Because when you invest in an IPO, you're not just investing in a company. You're investing in a story about the future. And the best stories, they're grounded in reality, but they also have that spark, that hint of something truly groundbreaking.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the one thing you want our listener to take away? What's the biggest insight you've gotten from all this research?
For me, it's this. The Indian startup IPO frenzy, it's more than just a financial trend. It's a reflection of a nation coming into its own. A nation bursting with innovation, ambition, a desire to make a real impact on the world.
It's like a collective coming-of-age story.
Yeah, and like any coming-of-age story, there will be challenges, setbacks, moments of self-discovery, but there's also that excitement, that sense of limitless potential that makes it so captivating.
So buckle up, listener. The Indian startup IPO roller coaster is just getting started. It's going to be a wild ride.
But remember, just like any roller coaster, enjoy the thrills, but hold on tight.
And maybe pack some motion sickness meds, just in case. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the exciting world of Indian startup IPOs.
So that was today's episode of my Side Hustle Weekend podcast. For everyone listening, if you're ready to take action on what you learned today, here's where you can find more resources. First, head over to sidehustleweekend.com. I've put together detailed guides, templates, and case studies. And while you are there, don't miss out on my free newsletter, Side Hustle Weekend. If you found value in today's discussion, hit that like button and subscribe to join our Weekend Hustlers community. Turn on notifications so you don't miss our episodes where we break down more side hustle strategies. Check the description below for all the tools and resources we mentioned today. Remember, everyone's journey starts with a single step. Whether you're looking to make an extra $500 a month or build something bigger, start with what you learned today and take action. So, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode where we'll break down another practical way to grow your income.